Pat Windrow at the Cable Easel with part 2 of a little study called Riverside in Oakdale. It's a lovely little spot. I started it on the first part, and here is exactly the way I left it off, and we're now working on the middle ground and the water. The angle is one of the interesting things about it. The wonderful subtle colors of these Long Island landscapes is another part of it that is intriguing, and the fact that working from life is probably the most effective and satisfying way of doing landscape paintings. I just try to stress every time I do these programs that you should avoid copying as much as possible, because you risk copying something which is not very good. So much for that. And besides that, the originality of your particular stroke is going to show up far more effectively if you are working from life and you interpret what you see the way you want to see it, not the way somebody else interpreted it. So, picking up where I was left off the last time is here in the middle ground with these typical Long Island cedars. The background is now set, and the application of paint over the background is proving to be quite possible. And applying this color with deliberate strokes, not with accidental ones, whereby you say, okay, I'm going to hit the canvas with this brush full of color, and hopefully it will look like a tree. I like to be able to imply that the strokes that you make must be deliberate strokes, and they must be there must be a reason for them. If the sun is hitting on one of the sides of this tree, it can't possibly happen accidentally with a technique of a brush full of color and hope that it makes some sense. It has to be done deliberately. So the strokes that I do are purposeful, and the accidentals are not the way I do it. So here is the pale color of this tree is now going to enable me to put the darker color of the one that's in front of it as a contrast, whereby you'll see that there are two trees here. One of them is the taller one, and the other one next to it has got a background that enables you to see that there is in fact another one in front of it. Something which is not always explained in these landscaping these shows that show how to do landscapes. How you get the play between two different trees has to be done with light and shade. It can't possibly be done with different colors, because the trees are the same color most of the time. So this tree, this one, is in front of this one. Now I'm going to give you some pale color just for repetition so that the understanding is clear. Here is the pale side of this particular tree, and then there's another one in front of it, and that's this one coming up right here. So the layers are what I'm talking about, and they should be it should be fairly simple to understand, and possibly something that you may not have been aware of until this very moment, which is one of the reasons for this program. Maybe it's one of the reasons that this program gets nominated for an ACE Award, because well, things are pretty clearly stated here, and nothing is really left to just entertainment. I understand that these programs are sometimes entertaining because somebody is actually doing something. But if information cannot be disseminated at the same time, it almost is a pointless endeavor, because this is not a showbiz show. This is a program that is hopefully giving some instruction. And from the letters that I get, I believe that instruction is in fact getting across, and that's why we're here, and that's why there is a possible for ACE awards every once in a while, because instructional programs tend to maybe sometimes not be as instructive as they could be. So blowing my horn and making a lot of noise doing it is one of the reasons that I feel that I can actually sit here and say that. Well, we've got 3 trees. How did that happen in this great mass of green? It happened by applying color, dark color against pale color, such as I'm doing here, and being able to decide. It's a simple formula that the dark against the light, it denotes another figure. So much for that. I'm going to go now onto this one, and behind it, however, there is a leafless tree that is now still too lazy to come out and become leafy. It's too early in the season, but this little tree with its bare branches is still an important part of the landscape, and the background is now set well enough so that the strokes of this little leafless tree can be done with a very subtle approach. This brush is extremely thin, very small, nice long bristles to it, and that's why you can get these very thin and nice little branches, which of course are in the distance, they're in the background, but they still have to tell the story of what it is that's happening back here. It's a little bit like saying just because it's in the distance, it doesn't mean that you show detail. Well, I don't agree with that entirely. Sometimes you have to show them. I'm not showing every of the million branches in this little tree back here, but I certainly have got to give the anatomy of this particular part of the painting. So back here we have the insinuation that there is a tree. Oh, there's one with a trunk which is a little bit heavier than the rest of it, and in it goes. So with that prepared, now I can continue and apply the color for the other little cedar that is in front of it, and that's the same technique as before. The darkness against the light, and remember that the sun hits a tree on the same side as all the other trees. So if this is the side of the tree that is light, that's where the light part of the tree is going to go. A cylinder is a rounded object, and a tree is really nothing more than a cylinder also, but of course with a lot of texture and a lot of variations. But for the most part, this cone shape is the shape of a cedar tree, not the deciduous ones, but certainly the cedars have these flame-like shapes, and they are in a way a kind of a variation on the cylinder, because the dark is on one side and it goes around the corner and it becomes light on the light side. There are of course interruptions. Branches stick up past the light side, and believe me, if you go out there and sit somewhere and you observe this, and you have to sort of get a technique going so that you're working somewhat quickly, because the sun has an interesting way of changing position in the sky all throughout the day. Of course, we'd be in really serious trouble if it didn't, but it's to be remembered when you're painting that the sun is going to change everything very rapidly. So if you can possibly get a study pretty well realized in a matter of 3 or 4 hours, then the moving of the sun is not going to disturb you that much. It is going to disturb you some, but not as much as if you take 6 hours. You can't be outside in the as a landscape painter for a period of 6 hours and have not see a disturbing change in the environment. Disturbing purely as a painter, it would be disturbing if it didn't change, as I said. So here we have these trees which are sunlit on one side and dark on the other. They assume a certain form when you do this, and they also give you that mystery of what is this that I'm looking at. So I've got a brush full of dark color here. Let me go and apply this dark color here in the distance where I didn't make these trees dark enough, and now the paint is somewhat set, I can apply over it, because down below in the water there is a nice reflection of these dark trees, and it's playing across the water, and hopefully when you introduce reflections in the water, it becomes extremely wet looking. Reflections are one of my very favorite things, you may have noticed, and there are going to be a number of these paintings for sale in this coming year's Art for Open Lands show, which we're going to have, and you will see that all of these paintings that I have done many, many times are having reflections in them very often. Now here is the sort of a lifeless color in this water. That is, it changes and it picks up a lot of the amber of the growth of river grass, and so the amber is going to be also in the water. The color of the water is important, especially when you're dealing with these reflections. So remember that whatever you see, if you see amber in the water, believe it. It's there for you to believe. Now, even though we know water is blue, and even though some of the other programs that show you water and lakes and things, the water is only blue if it's reflecting the sky. If it's reflecting something else, it's going to be something else, namely the color that is directly above it. So here we have. Let me mix up with my palette knife some nice rich tone of the river blue, which I believe is going to be, well, it's gotten kind of dark as the time has progressed, and I'm going to show you how I mean when I say pull color across the surface to try to get the look of the water as it. Let's see if I pull it across this surface and see if I can't get the look that happens when water is. When the water has movement playing on its surface. I think that you'll see here the palette knife has left some what I call sparkling colors, and it's done by getting plenty of color on the palette knife and pulling it across, and the little well, they are purposeful in a way, but they are the pretty highlights that take place on the surface of the water. Now, maybe nobody else is really that concerned about it, but I think that when you see this painting finished, you will either, hopefully, you will agree that the water does in fact sparkle with these little touches of color that have taken place by pulling the palette knife across the canvas, and hopefully have left some of these sparkles. The sparkles on water has been something that has been intriguing painters for hundreds of years. How do you do sparkles on water? And of course, it's all a question of interpretation by the painter, and by the time of day, and by the technique which is being used. I'm hoping that this technique is going to be effective enough to be able to tell the story. Now, once again, the color of a body of water is darker near the foreground, a phenomenon which I find is always there, and which I have decided that I'm not even going to worry about anymore. It is there, therefore I accept it, and it becomes darker as it comes towards the foreground. There's going to be some interesting things happening here a little bit later. As soon as this color sets, I'm preparing the surface of this water, just as I prepared the river grasses and the background of the trees in the background to receive the small branches in the part one. This is a background that is going to get ready to deal with the water as it changes, as the water changes, as the wind changes. So here, this is about where the blueness of the water stops, and this is also where the reflection of these dark trees is going to begin. But let me work up to that a little bit later. I'm going to revert now again to the brush and pay attention to this pale growth that is taking place here. It's got sort of amber tones, but it is extremely pale, and it's an unexplained growth of something here in this tree clump on this little island, or I think it was an island, or maybe it was just a little point that projects out into the river from another part. But it is it's a kind of it's a sort of a soft brownish type of thing, which is not yet become spring-like. It is still carrying its winter tones, but as I said before, it is part of the thing that makes these studies very interesting, that these ambers and roses and pinks of the other season are still lingering before the green clobber, as I call it. The absolute onslaught of green takes place within the next next few weeks, as a matter of fact. It's going to be, well, it'll be a study in blue and green, which is of less interest to me than these lovely amber tones. And they are apparently still, you know, they're still sort of colorless, which is what happens when all these things go to sleep for the winter. They do assume a colorless look about them. I'm going to be breaking in a very short period of time, but I want to finish this little area here in the front. This tree here is casting a rather deep shadow across the across these grasses, and that shadow is sort of a combination of sienna, and sienna's a wonderful color. Don't ever discount sienna. People call it brown, but what it is a rescuing color for any kind of shadow that takes place in any landscape. A sienna mixed with anything becomes a shadow color, really. And so here's the shadow of this tree. You can tell that the time of day, if you know that you're looking east, the time of day here is designated by these shadows that are being cast because the sun is over to the right of the canvas. And here even this strange and mysterious clump of grass is casting a shadow in that direction. All of these things may come as interest to you, and then again, when you get out there and see them, they may become of even more interest. In the meantime, I'm going to clean this brush. Don't go away. I've just got a little bit of housework to do that I'll explain when I come back. So see you soon. What I was doing while that break took place, I was preparing some very pale color for those tall grasses, and I was liquefying. Here on my palette, there's a puddle of very pale, sort of yellow and Naples yellow for these grasses. And you've seen a few close-ups of these grasses, and the grasses have got to be attended to because they're part of the landscape. And so I'm just going to barely touch the canvas with this very pale yellow, so that you can get some idea that there are grasses over there that are being lit by the sun and that are definitely part of this landscape, even though they're extremely subtle and even though they do sway in the wind, but they are part of the, whoops, too fat. Take it off with the finger when that happens. You see that because I want to make sure that I'm faithful to this particular to this scene, I wanted to make that clear, that even though there are many of them, you can merely interpret them and suggest that they are there and get the movement of them as they sort of sway in the wind, which was extremely strong the day that this was shot. But these little grasses tell a story about where you are, and they're caught by the sun. They don't have to be, botanically killed with too much information, but they must be there. And And so here somewhere, which is difficult to see, I'm going to show you that there is a land mass. So there's some kind of something going on down here by the shoreline. It's all sort of dark and it's all sort of light, and it's kind of mixed up all together. But it does have a kind of an amberish pale tone that this shadow is working against, and it goes down by the water. We have not too many moments left. I mean, there's enough for me to be able to finish this, but I want to be able to concentrate also on the reflections and on the fact that there are nice details which are very difficult to pick up with a camera. They're easily picked up with the eye and with the TV camera, because the TV camera stays on for 25 or 35 or 40 minutes and picks up these details, which means that this technique of going out and shooting a scene with a camcorder and then bringing it back gives you the opportunity to do a lot of very careful study of what it is that you see out there. And I'm sure that this technique will be extremely helpful to the people who are watching this program and who have been wondering about my ability to do this. Well, my ability to do this is because I have for years been observing all of this, but now I find that it can be frozen in time in your own house, and you can in fact teach yourself. I am totally self-taught, but certainly long before the era of the camera and the video. But now the opportunity is here whereby this can be used by everybody, and maybe we can get away from the programs that are not dealing with observation. The lack of observation in some of the programs that takes place is absolutely appalling to me, whereby you rely upon accidental something or others to hope that you get some kind of an effect. Well, that's not interesting to me. I think that we have got to be, you've got to understand what you're doing. If you're serious, if you're not serious about doing painting, that's fine. You can just watch the program, and it's fun. And I suppose my jabbering away at you has got some sort of an amusing quality to it. But the people who are really serious and want to get into the business of painting pictures, by all means, work from life. And if you can't go out there, take the camera, go take some pictures of it, and then come back and study it. Now, there's nothing wrong with study. As a matter of fact, it's more fun than watching television. Here is the introduction now of these dark tones that are coming from the trees. I'm doing it with a brush, but I'm also going to do it with the palette knife in a minute, with the same kind of pull the paint across the canvas technique which I was doing before. And by doing that, I'm going to clean. I'll use this one. Once again, let me show you how with just wiping once, I get a perfectly clean painting surface. You see, it's shining in the light here. There's no paint left on it at all, and that's hard to do with a brush. With a brush, you rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse, and half the time you don't get it off. So using a palette knife is it's a neat thing to use, and they're not expensive. They cost far less than brushes. They last a lot longer because they don't. And here I'm mixing up some reflection color for the water. And let's see if I can pull this color across here, and we get a nice. Let me see what happens when I go across here, and see if we can get some of the subtleties of that. Well, that didn't work. Let's try it again. Let's see if I can get rid of the part that I'm not fond of here. There are some of these shiny things that take place, and I'm overlaying into the blue, as you can see. If it works, it's great. If it doesn't, you simply go right over it and take it off. This is what you call being self-taught. You develop a style, and then you work it until you can actually say, well, this is my style, and this is how I do it, and this is my technique. I have a feeling that maybe I can probably pay attention to my monitor here. There is a sort of a circular surface here because the waves are coming in little circles. So I'm going to try to introduce that. Let's see if that's working. Well, sort of. However, it's when you stand back and you watch it that you realize that you have to maybe do something else to make it work. The darkness here is, of course, going to be relieved by some other observations, namely some pale blue little surface waves that come because the wind is up. But let me see if maybe I can really, yeah, I think there's going to be a need for me to. Let me pull this over this way and prepare this to receive some of those circular motions that the water is doing because of the movement of the wind. All right, let me get my little wonderful detail brush out. Mix a little bit of my very pale blue and of course, you see, you have to be sort of nuts to be willing to do these experiments in front of everybody. Usually painters like to work by themselves, but I noticed that these little waves are coming in this direction. And possibly that's what's going to make you understand that these little waves are doing that. Okay. All right. I'm not talking very much, as you can see, because I'm in the process of learning something. If this works, it's fine. If it doesn't work, well then, okay. Let me get rid of that. Yeah, let me see. Wait a minute. Hang on. Let's not panic. Where's my palette knife? There it is. And I'm going to see if I can make this run in this direction. Okay. I think it works. I think it's going to be okay. Let me run that over this way, and a little bit more on top. And then over here, because the sun is shining on top of this, there are the same little sparklings in the water. I find that there are probably also sparkles over, yeah, there they are. There are some sparkles that are taking place over here, and I'll see if I can pull this off. If I can't, I'll have to scrape it off. Yeah, I see the water sparkling there in the foreground, and it's very subtle, and I'm going to let you see how I pull it right across this canvas here. Too much, too much. Well, I kind of like it. There's maybe too much of it. Let me take some of it off. I usually talk a great deal when I work, but sometimes I have to concentrate. There, that's much better. I've overlaid it, and as you can tell, the overlaying is the thing that makes it probably mysterious, and also I think probably a nice. Well, it's a nice sort of experiment, and experimenting is always vital and quite important in painting. Now, the last thing that I think that I probably should do, and I'm not sure that it's actually necessary to put that stump that is sticking out there, but what is necessary is for me to put the little subtle, oh, where is that? You see, you lose things when you talk too much, and I need to find my oh, there it is. I want to show you about at the top of this picture. It's being framed by some little branches that are obviously a tree that are overhead. And these things can be just, as I said before, the sky background has set well enough to be able to put the little branches from the tree that are overhead, and they're sort of important to do what you call frame a picture. So these little branches are. They're not easy to do, but technique and some time and some effort can get you to understand how to introduce these little details that do act almost as a device. There is a nice feeling about these little guys in the foreground. I mean, in the top part of this picture, acting almost like the closing of the eye, and you got this picture contained. I probably would do this with a lot more observation if I had more time. I'm now down to the last minute, which of course is always the problem. The final thing, of course, is to sign these and to date them. It is interesting always to find out what year and when these were done. So I usually like to try to sign mine down in the lower right-hand corner in my own handwriting, and that's done with one of these tiny brushes. And let's see if I can. Well, yeah. Well, it's not important for me to sign this right now, but usually you should do it on the spur of the moment when you have worked, because many times you forget to do it, and then signing a painting painting on top of dry paint means that it's been applied over the dry paint, and that means that anybody could sign anything and call it their own. So if it blends with the paint of the moment, then obviously the signature is yours and it's genuine. Here's another few more branches that are sticking down here from above, and they'll be in bloom soon, and next week this will all be very dark, leafy branches. Right now they are just still bare from a stubborn spring. Well, I'm glad you tuned in. I hope you got something out of it. I sort of enjoyed doing it. I think it works. Tune me the next time whenever you hear that the Cable Easel is on. Bye-bye.